can you really achieve work-life balance? I think they've sold that subject into, you have to have a balance, right? And the reality is if I look back into my years of experience, having worked for multiple global companies, just like you have, my balance was more or less like many times it was highly demanding at work. Mm-hmm. And then many times it was highly demanding at home, right? I never had a balanced day, right? I mean, I was the same freaking person.
There's no scale.
No, there was no such thing.
50% of your time at work and 50% at home.
And I've heard advices, and I'm sure it works for some people. Look, when you get home, take off that vest of work, worries, and just leave it on the tree, and then just walk in there all nice and fresh. And it's like, look, I have the same, issues, the same personality, thoughts. If I was upset, clearly I'm not going to be as upset as I walk into the house, whatever not. But you don't just turn it on and off like a computer. My experience, I'm just going to right from the cuff, from the heart, from experience. I like what, and maybe he may not be the best spokesperson for this, right? Jeff Bezos was interviewed once, and he was saying, like, there's no such thing as work-life balance. No, he was saying he doesn't believe in work-life balance. He believes in work-life harmony. And harmony, I think, and I'm paraphrasing here, I think he alluded to the fact that many times it has to do with the energy left that you have to do things. So if you're focused at work and that takes all of your time and energy, and you go home or to your personal life and you're just like, don't talk to me, I don't want to hear what you've got, nothing left to give, then this side of the equation has sucked up all the energy out of you. And vice versa. If you're spending all this time at the beach and, vacationing, whatever not, and you really don't want to be productive at work, then that side of your life is taking all the energy out of you. I don't know if that makes sense.
It does. Here's my, I can't help but to think about work-life balance kind of in a historical context, right? So, work-life balance, really, the idea of it really came out of the UK, right? It was really during the women's movement where you had, women coming forth who were in business and saying, look, we want to be able to work, but also raise a family. And unfortunately, the way that things are structured, that's not really doable. And ever since then, this really happened in the 70s, you had this ideal, right? There's been this ideal with different companies really taking a very different perspective on what it actually meant. And one of the things that you said, which I absolutely agree with, maybe it was your words, maybe it was Jeff Bezos' word, is that I think part of the problem with work-life balance is a branding issue. It's an absolute branding issue, right? Because I can divide the reality of work-life balance to before these things existed, okay, and after they existed, right? And keep in mind, if this took place in the 70s, and I remember very, very, not that I was working that much in the 70s, right? I came in a generation later, but the reality of it was that when you began to hear that word, it was really about how do we create just a little bit more of a balance in the amount of time that people spend at work versus in other endeavors. If you go back to some of the original people around the idea of it. I think a gentleman by the name of Nolan, I think he was a social scientist, he had this idea that, 8 hours should be at work, 8 hours should be recreation, and 8 hours should be rest, right? So, they spun off from that idea. But then when this thing came around, suddenly, no matter where we were, we could be doing work. Right. And many of us, fell right into that trap. Right. So to your point, we could be on the beach, but as long as we had this phone or we had a laptop and we had a signal, we, instead of being out on the beach with, our families, we'd be up in the hotel room, on the land connection, doing that kind of work. And suddenly that wasn't the case. I do think that there is this, this idea around the language that's used for it. And I think that there are some times when our personal lives, right, are dominant, and sometimes when our work lives are dominant, and they're not equal, right? It's not like if I had to spend 10 hours on family issues at work this week, that next week that may not be the same thing. There's no equality there when it comes in terms of work-life balance. So I think to my point, it is you got a marketing problem, a branding problem that we got to get a change. And I do think that there is, with that said, the possibility for it, but it's a very interesting thing, right? We can pursue work-life balance as individuals, but if we happen to work for an organization that doesn't enable it or doesn't allow it, then that goes away, and vice versa, right? We may have an organization that is pushing, we really believe in work-life balance. We want to make sure that people have time off and they have flexibility in their schedules and things like that. But if we, as individuals, are driven by the work or by, a belief that if we work more, we're going to be promoted more, then we're not necessarily going to take advantage of it. And we've seen that as well. So, what do you think about that? I mean, the fact that we control it as much as the organization controls it.
Well, multiple things, actually. So number one, yes, I'm guilty. I worked for Nokia for quite a few years. I introduced that technology with all of my peers and friends that you were connecting, connected all the time, right? And we were as a batch, I'm always on email. The same thing was email. It wasn't just the cell phones, computers and all that. And let's face it, I think early in your career, is a batch of honor, if you will, that you've gone through this rigorous and demanding schedule and be able to come ahead.
Survived it. You
survived it, lived through it and all that. I also learned in all transparency that even with all these devices, right, you, as a leader, you would send emails on the weekend or in the middle of the night and whatever not. And somebody once said that nothing says more loudly, I don't trust my team, than that leader that says, I have to be in every call. I have to follow up. I have to be in everything. You're basically telling your team, I have to be there because you guys can't do it. Mm-hmm. Right. So I think as individuals, we need to be also cognizant of the price you pay for this always on lifestyle. Because there is a price for everything, right? From my perspective, there are different seasons in your life. Mm-hmm. When you have to be a lot more focused on different aspects of whatever that journey might be. To your point earlier, maybe it's more time at work this time because you need to get some things done, but then you make it up. And it changes. It's dynamic. We're very complicated individuals as human beings. However, and we're not going to make it a long podcast on this. I'd love to hear the feedback. I do think there are some areas where we as individuals can focus on try to bring some type of balance, if you will. For instance, it may not be for everyone. This is my experience, right? Planning or your to-do list, right? If you don't have a plan, whether it is at work or you don't have a personal life, you don't know where you're going, you can easily lose your way. Everything becomes chaos. Everything becomes a priority if you don't have one, right? Which is not to say that you can't be flexible and pivot and address the challenges that come your way. It just means you have to have some sense of direction. Prioritizing your priorities, right? If you say this is a priority, but you don't make it a priority, well, thanks for the planning, but it's not really happening, right? Then I think is one of the things that I was looking at some of my past notes is, and I was guilty of this, a few years, a couple of decades ago, it was like the multitasking bit, right? Mm-hmm. I could do 2, 3, 4 different things all at once. Right. You're everywhere, but nowhere at all. So concentrate on one thing at a time. I mean, realistically, your brain can only process one thing at a time.
Yes.
we like to say, like, no, we're doing everything. Like, you're doing everything wrong.
That's exactly right. It's this idea. Yeah, I do everything badly. I do all of it, but I do it all badly.
Yeah. So I mean, so some of the things, and for me personally, when it comes to I guess the topic of work-life harmony or balance, exercise for me was my thing. Mm-hmm. I needed to just some downtime to understand what needed to happen, replenish energy, which is what I mentioned before. If you're drained completely at the end of the day, you have nothing else to give to some other aspect of your life, then you're going in just one direction. I don't know if that all makes sense, but it's just my perspective. I
mean, I think to summarize, both you and I think, have a common perspective, and that is that it is possible, right? But we as individuals control a lot of our ability to take advantage of it and take advantage of it correctly. But that's our point of view. We want to hear what you guys have to say. So, please drop us a comment. Let us know. Do you think work-life balance is achievable? We'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, and can you achieve it? Even with now that you're doing a lot of remote work, right? Things are changing. Give us your feedback. Love to hear it.
Let us know.
All right, guys.
Until next time.